In today's edition of NHL Trade Talk, we're discussing the Boston Bruins, the New York Islanders, the Tampa Bay Lightning, and the first place Vegas Golden Knights. And that's coming up next. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams with an unbiased opinion. So if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. So let's jump into today's edition of NHL Trade Talk. As I mentioned off the top, we've got 4 teams to discuss: the Bruins, Lightning, Golden Knights, and the New York Islanders. Now the New York Islanders, what I want to discuss there is whether or not they should set a deadline at re-signing John Tavares, or really should they consider trading him by the deadline if a new contract is not in place. That could be detrimental to the franchise if he were to walk for nothing. So I want to give you my thoughts and see what you guys think about that. But first, let's jump into some other teams here because they'll be a little bit quicker, and I want to update a few notes here in these other teams, and we'll move on to the Islanders here momentarily. So let's start with the red-hot Vegas Golden Knights, who just moved into sole possession of first place in the NHL. What a story they've been this year. This team is absolutely incredible to watch, and they've been doing outstanding. They're getting all kinds of great performances all around between goaltending, defense, and lots of scoring up front. This Vegas Golden Knights team is for real. They're in first place, almost guaranteed at this point to be a playoff team. And at this point, I wouldn't be surprised they make lots of noise in the playoffs. There was all kinds of speculation that a lot of their pending UFAs would most likely be sold off closer to the deadline. Of course, nobody anticipated in their wildest dreams here that the team would be doing nearly this well. Obviously, that's changed quite a bit. They've got some guys signed to extensions, but when you look at certain sports outlets like TSN and Sportsnet, when you look at their trade bait list, they're still kind of listing some of these guys on there as potential trade bait guys. Like David Perron, for example, is a one name that's not signed, and even James Neal. Now, I know that I've heard that there have been some discussions around James Neal and extension. I'm not sure how close they are, but at this point, I really can't see the Vegas Golden Knights selling off any assets. At the same time, I don't really see them going out of their way to acquire either. Based on their whole foundation of the franchise and how they went about building this team, I don't see them. Yes, they're stockpiled with some prospects and some picks, but I just don't really see them mortgaging the future right now to see how far they can go this year. To be honest, I wouldn't be surprised to see them go really far with the team they have. I think they really believe in the group that they already put together in season 1, and I really don't see them doing much to acquire and add payroll for a playoff run here much, really, because they're doing fantastic. Why would you kind of tinker with what you have? You know, especially in their situation, it's their first season. You know, they've got all kinds of picks loaded up for the future. I probably would just ride this out. But at the same time, would they sell off any assets at the deadline if they're going to risk losing them to free agency? Normally, I'd say yes, but in this case, I'm going to say highly doubtful that they do that. I mean, good luck explaining that to this brand new, energetic fan base that even though we're winning and going to the playoffs, we're moving these guys out and maybe making the team a little bit weaker. The only way they'd ever move anybody out is if they were swapping and moving players in. And, you know, that is a possibility. You know, you could see one guy out for a guy in. That's always a possibility. But I really don't think the Vegas Golden Knights are going to do much of anything here at the deadline. I think they're going to stand firm with what they have. They have no reason to really mortgage the future. And they really don't have any reason to sell off either, because they have an excellent shot here of being a strong playoff team. Moving on to the Atlantic Division, and we'll take a look at Tampa and Boston. The Tampa Bay Lightning obviously are settling on a little bit of a losing skid, losing 5 of their past 8 games. I don't think it's any coincidence that a lot of that has to do with the injury to Victor Hedman. Hedman obviously just goes to show how important he is. When you look at this team and their stars, you've got Vasilevsky in the net, you got Kucherov, Stamkos leading the way up front, and you got Hedman on the back end. I don't think Hedman sometimes doesn't get enough credit for just how good this Lightning team is. And after his injury, it's not a wonder to me why they're now struggling a bit. Although it's, you know, quite normal for teams to struggle at times anyway, I think his injury certainly has a lot to do with it. So having said that, I think as we approach the trade deadline, I think we're going to see a couple of things out of the Tampa Bay Lightning. I wouldn't be surprised to see them add a depth defenseman. I don't think they can ever replace Victor Hedman, and he should be back before the playoffs. Obviously, that's not a concern at this point. However, just goes to show how important your defensemen are, and that you can never have too many heading for the playoffs. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them add at least one defenseman as a depth piece for the playoffs. There seems to be all kinds of defensemen on the trade date boards. If you look around, the top players likely to be traded before the deadline. There's a long list of defensemen. I think you'll see the Tampa Bay Lightning snagging one of them. The other area I think the Tampa Bay Lightning need to take a look at, and I'm sure they're doing this already, if you look around between all the different statistics as a team, they're actually really bad at faceoffs, surprisingly. They are ranked 30th out of 31 teams in the NHL on faceoffs. So it's even more amazing how many goals they put up and how well they perform, considering how high percentage of the time they're starting to play without the puck. So this goes another reason to show how good they are. But as we approach the playoffs and all the other teams are getting that much better and that much stronger, I certainly wouldn't I wouldn't be taking my chances that you don't have too many strong center icemen at faceoffs, because obviously possession is huge to creating offense and preventing the other team from scoring as well. So I think you're going to see them maybe look to add a center iceman who's really strong on faceoffs and can certainly play a key role. I know a guy that comes to mind would be like an Antoine Vermette with Anaheim. If Anaheim's looking like they might be out of it, maybe that's something that they could consider. I'm not really sure contract-wise if they can make that work. But if it's not Vermette, like that type of player, somebody who can play like a fourth-line role, be a key center iceman and take a lot of key faceoffs for the team. If you take a look now at Boston, who's frantically tracking down the Tampa Bay Lightning, with Tampa finally hitting a little bit of a skid here, and Boston's been on fire for quite some time, I can certainly see them maybe adding a piece or two for the playoffs as well. I wouldn't be surprised if they look to add on defense. I mean, they have a pretty good defense core there. You get the ageless wonders of Zdeno Chara still playing a lot of minutes. You get Charlie McAvoy, Torrey Krug, Brandon Carlo. I mean, this defense is loaded up, and they're doing pretty solid. But I think you can never have too much depth for the playoffs, and especially when you have a guy like Chara still playing so many minutes at his age. If they ran into an injury problem back there, they could certainly be in trouble. So I think we'll see them add some depth on defense. I don't think they'll be looking to add too much up front in the forward group, but I wouldn't be surprised to see them maybe add a depth winger, and it could come at the expense of Ryan Spooner going out. I know Ryan Spooner's been a name in Boston that's been a bit of a trade speculation on and off here for quite some time, dating back to last year. I mean, I know at the same time he did show a lot of potential in upswing at one point, and he's had trouble with consistency issues his whole career in the NHL, really. And I'm not sure if they'll actually move him out. I mean, he is a pretty good player at times, but I think, like I said, consistency has been his concern, and he might be the casualty here if they want to bring in a piece up front. Then if they need to shed some salary going out, he most likely would be the guy. I mean, you've got the top line in the NHL, arguably, with Patrice Bergeron, Brad Marchand, and David Pastrnak. They've been dynamite, and right now there's no line in the NHL that's better. So they have lots of firepower up front, and they do have some their second and third lines are looking pretty solid as well. If the Bruins can stay healthy, they've certainly surprised me a little bit this year. They've come a long way, and they're certainly going to be a dangerous team to run into in the playoffs. Now, moving on to the Islanders here finally. Here are my thoughts regarding John Tavares and Josh Bailey. Both of these guys, arguably the top two guys. Obviously, Bailey's hurt right now, and really Tavares is by far their number one guy, but Bailey's proven to be a pretty solid number two. I mean, you got Anders Lee having a heck of a year as well, and that second line with Barzal and Beauvillier and Eberle has been dynamite too. So really, they've got a pretty solid top six in New York. If they could keep the puck out of the net, they'd actually be a pretty solid team. So as I've speculated before, I fully expect them to make an effort here to upgrade their goaltending. But at the same time, all that aside, this New York Islanders team is going to struggle to be a playoff team this year. They are in the hunt. They are in the mix. They're not out of it. As of right now, they're not in. But really, you string a few wins together, that Metro division is pretty tough. But they can get a few wins together here. They can be right back in the thick of things. So they do need to consider themselves a playoff contender at the very least right now. But with John Tavares' contract situation so huge and looming over this franchise, the question I wanted to ask everybody out there is, if they can't get him signed by the trade deadline, do they take the chance of him finishing up the season and going to market and losing him for nothing? I mean, if you think about the haul that they could get back for trading John Tavares at the deadline, I mean, look at what the speculation has been around Evander Kane getting 3 or 4 pieces back. So you can imagine what a team would pony up for a guy like Tavares. You got to think about that. I mean, at the same time, can this Islanders franchise afford to lose him? No. And I think at the same time, you know, you could argue that I'd rather have him on my team than trade him for a bunch of prospects and picks. He's still at a young age. He's a tremendous, you know, player, arguably one of the top 5 to 10 players in the league. You know, he's the face of the franchise. He's their franchise guy. So they really need to make every effort to keep him. But if I'm the New York Islanders, I'm not messing around here. I'm offering him top dollar, and I'm doing it as soon as possible to try to get him signed before the deadline. However, I'm not convinced that regardless of what that offer is, that he's going to sign it prior to the deadline. It seems like he's pretty set on going to market, and I think at the very least he wants to see what else is out there so teams can actually formally make an offer to him. And I wouldn't be shocked to see that happen. Now, we saw what happened with Steven Stamkos before to Tampa Bay Lightning. They did not trade him. They held out, and it came right down to the wire, and they did end up signing and keeping him. But, you know, I'm sure that the organization was you know, on their nerves here a bit to figure out what to do. I mean, do you take that chance? I mean, you've got a lot going with this Islanders franchise right now. And they have a pretty solid top 6. If they can make some upgrades in goal, you know, they have the potential to be a pretty solid team here in the short term. They've got a brand new building on the way. They've got some good, you know, finally have good ownership in place. So they've got a lot riding here on this contract situation. So the question to you is, do the New York Islanders set a deadline of the trade deadline this year to get him signed? Or if not, do they trade him? If it were me, and I'm looking after my organization, as much as I'd hate to do it, and I wouldn't want to do it, I don't think you can take the chance of losing him for nothing. If a player is that dead set on going to market, then that means you're at risk of losing that player. If you've made your best offer, if you've offered him $12, $13 million over 8 years and he's not signing, then that tells me he's going to market. If he's going to market, you never know. On July 1st, teams get crazy and wacky out there, and there was speculation, and it was just that, speculation, from a report from the Hockey Insiders on TSN saying that they were told by a league executive if Tavares goes to market, they would not be surprised if a team offered him a 7-year deal at $15 million. That's absolutely crazy when you think about it. If you look at what the other top guys are getting, and I've speculated here before, but the cap going up, I wouldn't be surprised to see him get 12, 12 and a half, maybe even 13. But he's realistically, 15 seems a little bit crazy for any player in the league based on where everybody's at right now. But you know, it's just too risky. I think if it's me and I'm running the organization, I trade him by the deadline if he doesn't sign that contract. But I want to know what you guys think. Should the Islanders consider trading Tavares if he won't re-sign by the trade deadline? You're risking losing him for nothing, and you could get a major haul back to set up your franchise for the future. Don't forget to follow us on social media. You'll see our link to our Twitter account right here. We're also on Facebook and Instagram. All of our social media links are in the description below, so certainly check us out there. If you liked the video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, again, please consider subscribing. We talk hockey here every day, all day long. All 31 teams, unbiased opinion. Thanks very much for watching, everybody. We'll catch you next time.